Hi, we're back again for our second, the second installment of the NUR695 cohort week 4 meeting. We left off the last meeting with Jody bringing her questions that she brought to the cohort meeting. And so I think you have another question, Jody, 1 or 2 more, and then we'll go around again.
Okay. We kind of actually touched on this a little bit. I think you did, Shelley. My next question is, how do you think that the education, I think you both did, education and leadership entwines? Because it really does. And we sort of talked about that already. But it is so much more, there's so much more in common than I realized when we started this program.
Yeah.
It really is. And I think that's part of the reason why we shared so many classes. But yeah, we did hit on it. I just lost my train of thought. But yeah, the programs, they're both very parallel because leadership and education, it kind of goes hand in hand. Because you have to make sure that you're, as a leader, you have to make sure that who's ever in the unit, that they are properly educated. And then you have the educators that's there trying to enforce the education. But they also need the backing from the management to make sure that everything is being taken care of. Because you can't put everything 100% on the educators to say, hey, this is your department, make sure that they're educated. Leadership has a role to play in that as well.
I agree. And the educator, usually having more experience or having a higher level of education really is a role model. And although they don't have the title of manager, I think that they are just as integral. No, I didn't say it right. What is it? Say the word for me. Integral.
Yes.
Integral? No, you know what I mean. They're just as important. Let me just delete that. Back up. And so I think they're really just as important. And I'll give you an example, kind of like on our unit, we have an educator, I'm the assistant, we have a manager, and there's an educator. And we work very closely. She goes to all the meetings that we go to, and really sort of handles the aspect of making the unit aware of the changes that are specifically practice-based, but yet also has a really good awareness of operational issues that are happening on the unit. And so, for instance, I get reports for critical values. So any of the low chems that come in for babies, like low blood sugars, will come to me. I get a report every day. And so what I do is I look at that data, I go back through the chart, and I'm looking to see if they met the criteria of notifying the provider within 30 minutes, and is it documented like in the flow sheet where I can find it. And so if those things are missed or they're one-offs, then I can kind of talk to the educator about where we need to maybe tighten up for any education that has to go out. So I feel like they're really closely tied. The only thing that they really don't do much of is more like the housekeeping sort of stuff, which is like payroll, scheduling, and those sort of like housekeeping things, and they're not like, they don't manage budgetary things. Definitely those are things that they could do. It's not like it's, something they definitely couldn't get some education and experience around, but they're really sort of focused on like the competencies and those sort of things because you're an educator, but that's kind of how we work together.
I have one more, but
okay.
It's kind of not even like really a formal question. So, I've been out of the hospital for a little while, and I see the other side of the educator role now, because when I worked in the hospital and those quality control nurses would walk through, and everybody was like, "Oh man, why are they here?" You know what I'm talking about, right? Like, "Oh, you better do it right because they're down here." And now I see it from their perspective, like, we're just here because then it kind of felt like they were policing. And now I totally understand while they were there. Do you guys, have you experienced what I'm talking about? Do you know what I'm talking about, or am I crazy?
No, I experienced because I'm still in the hospital, we see quality, especially, in the daytime, and they want to come around and make sure that you're, met all of your, what is the word I'm looking for? Make sure that you have everything filled out as far as your core measures, make sure that the bundles and everything are completed. And a lot of times, some of the junior nurses, they feel that, quality management, their job is to harass people. But I think that sometimes they don't realize how important that those actual core measures are, and to make sure that they have the proper medications and everything that they need while they're hospitalized to transition home, so that you can decrease the readmission rate from the hospital. Yeah. So, everybody has a role, it's just knowing your role and respect the other person's role.
Yeah.
I feel, I definitely noticed something similar. And especially like developing that finesse of when I first started to like give feedback to people, I was terrible at it. Like I had a feedback sandwich because I am a pleaser personality. So I come at you with, you're such a great nurse, but maybe you should consider, getting the chem before, the baby's 2 hours old, because that's protocol. So the message gets lost, I think, if you don't have experience giving feedback. And so I think the one thing is to really sort of develop a relationship with people if you can. And I think sort of bringing back the reason why we want to have things. And I think making it a safe place where they can share about their experience, I think is really helpful in letting them hear you. And then I think tying it back to those core measures that Pam was talking about, and sometimes it's really good because I think nurses like data to sort of give them a visual representation of how their performance is as a unit. And, maybe we're 98% here and this is great because last month we were at 96%. And how does that, what are we doing differently? And I think, recognizing and reinforcing the right protocols and when people, and good catch, those sort of things. And I think that goes a long way to sort of help you meet your core values.
Mm-hmm.
Did that answer the question? I feel like I got off on a tangent. Sorry.
Oh, you're fine.
Yeah.
No, you answered the question. I think another part of that too, just thinking about, speaking of quality, you think of a lot of times that, I don't know what system, you guys use this for, is like when you're reporting like near misses and like we have Quantro system. And a lot of times there are a lot of things that happen within the unit. And, from a quality standpoint, these things need to be documented, but people won't document them. And I can remember one day I seriously got mad at the quality personnel because she called down and I had pulled some medication and I still had the key in my pocket. And I actually left the hospital and I went home. And she called me and told me like, hey, one, I need to come back to bring the key because per pharmacy, they can still see that I had it checked out. And two, when I got there, I had to Quantros myself. And I felt like it was the most retardedest thing. Like, why do I have to Quantros myself for taking out a key? She was like, Pam, this happens every day. And she was like, you guys don't understand like the money that is put into, reordering keys or reordering equipment because it's always coming up missing.
Yeah.
Like, when I actually sat down and I thought about it, I was like, actually it makes sense. So I did it, but I was mad first, but I did it.
Right. So that I think proves that it's a systems issue, right? So what would they have to do based on all those safe reports? Because that's their data that they have. What are we going to do based on all those safe reports? What system are we going to put in place where, to change that? Yeah. So I do get it. And I feel like I will tell you that initially when I started working in this position and I would get safe reports, I'd be like, oh my God, mother baby wrote another safe report on us, and I had a hard time appreciating them because it felt like they were always like picking on the L&D nurses or whatever. But then if you think about it, they're set up in the perfect position to sort of find everything that falls off of our plate because we deliver patients to them, right? So their prime. Like they have actually no choice but to sort of review everything and all the care we've done, and then to sort of do safe reports. And then because we get people from out, you know, are we gonna like write a safe report on them because they showed up without calling their doctor? No. I mean, so, you know, and so we used to get a lot of safe reports from them, but then I started, you know, looking at them as like a gift, because we don't know what's happening until people let us know. And sometimes that one time you might get a safe report, but it's happened 10 more times or 20 more times. And so the more times that you get the safe report, you really are able to sort of figure out where the process breaks down.
Yep, and that's basically what that boils down to, processes break. Because one of the biggest issues, I'm glad you said that, was that we always had a problem as far as like patients coming in, maybe they was on a heparin drip for whatever reason. Yep. And we know that, you know, your PTT has to be checked 6 hours, you know? Yep. And so what was beginning to happen was that in some organizations, nurses can't draw their own labs, so you have to wait for lab personnel to come up. Mm-hmm. And they would come up, you know, 7-8 hours later, and then the nurse is the person that's getting dinged because, you know, you're not documenting that you call the lab tech to, you know, find out where anyone was and why wasn't this drawn on time, because that's the thing they're looking at, especially when you end up in situations where these heparin drips are super therapeutic and now you're stopping them for an hour when we should have known about this 2 hours ago.
Right.
And no one was documented. So now, you know, I guess I became the queen of Cointreau's. Like every little thing, I put it in there. And it's a learning. You can use it as a true education tool, because that's basically what it boils down to. How can we fix the processes to make it better?
Right.
Yep.
So,
good example.
I think that's right.
Okay. Okay. I think what questions do you have, Pam?
So I guess my first question, is there, I mean, I know that we talked a lot about a lot of things, but is there anything else that you guys would like to accomplish, you know, by the end of the year, or maybe within the next 6 months?
Jody, go ahead.
She likes to make me go first.
It's alphabetical, my first name.
Well, honestly, for me, in the next 6 months, I'm hoping we get our land. If this position, this assistant director position pans out, it will take me that long to kind of get my feet under me, I think, at least. So I don't really have goals other than to just enjoy life maybe a little bit and, you know, work on the land. And if this position doesn't pan out, then, you know, obviously things will change a little bit, but if it does, then I'll be staying where I am. So we'll see. We'll see how this plays out, and we'll fly by the seat of our pants like we do as nurses. That's what
you'll let us know, because you're going to have our contact information.
That's right. What about you, Shell?
In the next 6 months, let's see. Well, I'd like to clean my basement. Are we talking professional? I'd like to put my laundry away and wash my laundry. Very, very like, you know, sort of very tasky things, I think. Professionally, I think, you know, I'd like to apply for, because I've been in this position for 2 years now. I would like to apply for my management certification. So we'll, because I think it's meaningful, and so I like to do that. And then I think sort of iron out where I want to go. I have a school in mind, but you know, I need to apply. So I need to do that, and then figure out where I'm going to go, and then take a little break and sort of catch up on some things at work, some projects that I've been sort of sitting on, because that just got sort of pushed to the side because of the strike and school. And, you know, that's the way that things happen. And so some things that I'm working on at work is we're really looking to revamp our perinatal loss workflow. We have a good paperwork workflow in Epic, but the nurses really sometimes have a hard time following the how it's listed in Workday, and the policies up for renewal. So I also go to the newborn QA. So I'm working with the chief attending there at that meeting to sort of, and a group of others, to revamp that policy. So I have to do that. And then I think just, really look at some things on the unit that I've been trying to get done. That's about it, really. And clean the basement.
Gotcha. The most important. I laugh even when I ask that question, because even for myself, as I'm looking at myself in this video, I see, gain some weight, have some extra fat. So I'm looking at, just getting healthy and trying.
Mm-hmm.
My boyfriend just went and bought all of this equipment and put it out in the garage so that I can start working out. And I think that now that, school is almost over, I can make that a focus, because I can only really focus on a few things at a time. And working out is not a priority at this point. And I need to.
Cam, I did so well. I went to the gym like 3 nights a week this whole time until this summer, when I had to start doing clinicals on top of working 45 or 50 hours a week. And then the gym was what went to the wayside. So I haven't been to the gym in like 3 months.
Yeah.
I'm with you.
We can all get back at.
Yeah.
Starting after next week.
Yes.
I did good too. Like I did good. Mark, my husband and I, we did good for like a month. I was like taking my lunches to work. I was like buying bulk at Costco, and that was like only for NUR695. It just sort of fell off the wagon again. And so, and I also, my horse is sound, and so I'm going to do some fox hunting. It's not a real fox, don't worry. So that's what I'm going to do.
If you guys see me keep looking away, it's because I'm really trying to figure out what this dog is doing. I don't know if you can hear her, but she's really distracting me. From the blinds, I'm like, okay, can you stop? Like she's trying to get my attention. I'm sorry. And I guess this one is more of a personal question for myself, because I've heard both of you guys mention it. So Shelly, you mentioned that, going into the role that you're in right now, you didn't feel that you had the tools, you needed going into it. And, for you, Jody, you were saying that when you applied for your position online as an educator, you didn't feel that you were exactly matched for the position either. So recently, I just applied for a management position, and actually did it like a few hours ago. And I have a strong cardiac background. I don't necessarily feel that I have all of the skills that, match for the job, but I think that, as far as like the education base, that I would be fine. I guess, what information would you pass on to me, that would be, I guess, kind of encouraging or motivating for someone who doesn't feel that they are where they need to be when they have the potential tools to be successful in that role?
I think the first thing that I would tell you is to not be scared to try it. Because like for me, I was super scared to leave, to like step out into something else, because I really enjoy being a nurse. But I love this. So if I wouldn't have done it, I'd still be where I was.
Gotcha.
And don't be scared to ask questions, because they don't expect you to know everything when you start a new position. Take that time to kind of glean what you can from the people around you.
Okay.
Yep. I also agree with that. And then say that's not necessarily your specialty. I know plenty of successful nurse managers who have stepped into leadership positions on a unit that wasn't their specialty, their clinical specialty, and managed just fine. A lot of the times it's more about, I think, putting yourself out there. So if you step into that role that's maybe a little bit different, but you have some really good skills that you can kind of tie in, and you take the time to get to know your staff through, doing a clinical orientation with them, or your support staff. Like, for instance, on our unit, we're really short-staffed on our LDA, labor and delivery assistants. And so I learned the secretary role, which is very intimidating for me, because they have the situational awareness, and they're sort of like a hybrid catch-all logistical ninja of labor and delivery. Like, they have this very, very real situational awareness, and they're just sort of doing things on the periphery that we don't necessarily see. And so one of those is they are in the secretary role, but when there's a shoulder dystocia, they're the ones who are paging everyone for us. So when a nurse calls out, we have a shoulder and the nurse is this. And I'm like, oh my goodness, like, what if I don't page them right? Or what if I can't get the application up and I type in the wrong, and so I trained for it. And then they were short one night and I went in and did a night shift and was supporting the secretary role. And so I think being willing to sort of stretch yourself a little bit and do things that aren't a little bit uncomfortable, but you grow in that position. I think that connects with your people. And I think that, and I think you can do anything you want to do, really.
Yep. Whatever you put your mind.
Because I almost find it to be intimidating because, you look at the skills and the qualification and, it's very basic, mm-hmm. but maybe because I'm putting too much thought into it in the sense of I don't have any management experience as far as like budgeting and those parts of it, but as far as like being a charge nurse, having a strong cardiac background, one of the requirements, of course, is having a bachelor's. I'm like, okay, I'm 2 weeks away from a master's. So it isn't the education component of it because I have that. It's just some of the other things that I don't have. And basically that all boils down to, finances and management, in which I feel like if it's something that they really want, they will teach you how to do it. But at the same time, it's like I kind of step back and don't want to apply for it because I feel like that maybe there's someone out there who actually has those skills that they would pick up before they, look at my application.
No, don't ever not do it, because I think a lot of times we don't do things just out of fear.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. But and I don't know how they do it up in where you work, but the hospital that I came from, we had a lot of managers that were new that they had they had a leadership class that every manager had to take. And then they always aligned them with a mentor, somebody that could teach them those things that you don't know.
Okay.
Right. So they had somebody kind of like a buddy system to work with them and help them.
Okay.
And there's nothing that's lost from going through the motions. You learn a lot, you interview, you field those questions. And even if you get into it, and you might decide just based on the interview that you don't mesh with the people that you've interviewed with. They may not be a good fit for you. But just going through, I think, that interview process, and you submit the applications. And I think really thinking about how your practice and your leadership philosophy is going to align with the mission and vision of and values of the place where you're applying. And I think if you can speak to those, you've been through this course, you've looked at finance and what that means on the management level, and and what a budget is and what a variance is and those sort of things. And a lot of it is like balancing your budget at home. I'm sorry, but it is. And I mean, they're bigger numbers and there's a lot of things to think about, but it's budgeting, right? You have to, and forecasting for the year, and really, and I think, what Jody said about getting a mentor, a lot of places do that. But think about it this way. So say you're applying against a nurse manager who might have that sort of finance background, but has a BSN and hasn't stretched themselves and hasn't done any quality, task force or practice council or any of those things to sort of stretch themselves, or hasn't got their certification. Who would you rather really invest your time in? Somebody who's willing to grow and stretch themselves and learn, who's proven to do that, or somebody who hadn't necessarily, they might have the finance background, but they haven't really sort of stretched themselves and hasn't really tied their, leadership style into how they would align with the organization. So it's kind of, you really can't lose by doing it.
Right. I agree.
Well, I applied, so we'll see what comes out of it. I'm hoping.
Good. And you can let us know, because you're going to have our contact information.
I really will.
Good.
Oh, you guys got the job.
Yeah. Great.
So.
Let's see. Do you have a third?
No, not well. I guess my question would be for you then. I know right now that you are in an assistant manager role, and I'm pretty sure you enjoy your role. But do you think that in the near future you would find yourself transitioning to being primary? I guess if I'm saying that the right way.
Yeah, you mean like just the management role versus the assistant manager? Um, I don't know. I think that we have I think our leadership team right now is a really good team. It wasn't necessarily what I anticipated. It wouldn't want to be what I would have picked right out of the bat, but we have different styles. Like she's very analytical and I like the soft skills, as you can tell. And so, but we make a really good team. And I think we both appreciate our strengths. And so right now, I think just getting better at my position is really important to me, and just sort of like honing those skills. And I think I'm a big believer of you end up where you're supposed to be.
Yes.
And so I think if the right thing came available, I would do it. I feel a lot more confident, like you were saying, how you'd apply to the management position.
Mm-hmm.
I definitely have been just kind of looking to see what's available. I really would. I like the HR piece, and I like the coaching piece, and so I'm always kind of looking at the talent strategies to see at HR, because I think there's a role. We also have a new director of culture and patient experience, and so I think that they're really going to do a lot to speak to the culture. And so I'm always curious to see kind of what's going to pan out of that. And so potentially, would I apply for that? Maybe.
I think you should, because you were just talking about this not too long ago.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah, I like the part of it, but I don't want to cram myself into something where I can't, so I'm just being open to what the universe brings me. That and a lot of prayer.
I understand. So,
yeah. Mm-hmm. And maybe it's my job just to learn now more about culture, and maybe what I've learned will come into play later. And so just working on me.
Okay. Yeah. Well, that's all of my questions.
Okay.
So we probably have less than 15 minutes left. So.
Okay. So I'll just quickly go over mine. So so my question to you guys is, have you thought about or have you researched any regional organizations that you might join? Like any leadership organizations for Pam, or any education or academic organizations, Jody, that you guys in your area that you are already a part of or considering joining?
For me, outside of taking the exam for CCRN, that's all that I've thought about here lately. To be honest with you, even thinking about as far as like taking for the management certification, mm-hmm. I haven't put any thought process to that. I think that that would be something that I would do after I gain some experience, in a nursing role. So maybe a year or two from now, maybe, but not immediately. Not mm-hmm. something that I've thought about.
What about you, Jody?
Actually, like professional organizations, not really, but the more that I get involved with the education piece, the more that I get interested in like the Board of Nursing.
Mm-hmm.
So it's kind of been a topic of conversation between my director and myself,
mm-hmm.
Because we don't like a lot of the way that they handle the LPNs in the state and the regulations that they have on them. And so the only way to change that is to be involved, right?
Yeah. Yeah, that's definitely true. And so the second piece of that is more recommendations. I would, if you're able to, recommend that you both join organizations that are that tie to your specialty, because there's a lot can be gained from networking. And I've just learned this more recently through this this AONL, or Organization of Nurse Leaders, academic cohort that I was able to join. it's really a lot of nurse leaders that are from the Northeast region.
Mhm.
And sometimes organizations like that, you make some really strong connections and you find out about positions that you might not know about within your organization. And you can have mentors and things like that. And I think that they're really important. On the academic side, you might make connections with somebody who has the dream job for your education, that maybe has like an opening right down the road from your new house on the beach, so I think it's really important to sort of to join those organizations. I think they matter, and I think they help you stay connected to evidence-based and best practice.
I definitely look into those.
Yeah, I would do it if you can. And sometimes they can get coaches. Like I got a coach with mine, and you get special discounts, and it's just a way to sort of like really maintain those relationships with people who you can connect with, and you can sort of like work out your problems, and you can get outside of your organization.
Okay.
Yeah, so I would do it if you can. And the other one is, I have 3, but I can do 2. Actually, you know what, Jody, it was a very similar question, and mine was just like, how do you plan to support the leadership management dyad? And I don't think we need to go into that again, because I think we sort of answered that. And so the other one would be culture in your organization. And what has been your experience as far as like union type organizations? Have you guys ever been involved in like the collective bargaining scene? Or
No.
I think Virginia, if I'm not mistaken, is right to work. Can't remember.
Right to work. We don't have unions.
Yeah.
Okay. And then so how do you feel like culture is addressed in your hospital or your facility? Is that too heavy? That may be too heavy for 6 minutes. So you can give me a down and dirty if you want.
I think currently there's a lot of disconnect between, leadership, the nurses, even patients coming in from the community. And I'm trying to think of a lighter way to put it without sounding rude about it and being professional. There's a lot of things that can be changed. Just recently, we just went through a merger with a company, Mercy Hospital, out of I think
Yep.
they're Ohio based. So we just recently merged to create one stronger foundation. And then from there, because you have Bon Secours Hampton Road and Bon Secours Richmond,
Yep.
that just got broken off into 2 different markets. And they're kind of like refacing everything because they feel like the culture within the organizations are not where it should be.
Mm-hmm.
So one of the hospitals, a lot of doctors, a lot of top-heavy leadership, they've already transitioned out the door and brought in new personnel. And one of the hospitals that I'm working at right now, we're actually waiting to see how this process is actually going to turn out, because we feel that it needs a complete facelift, especially from a leadership standpoint, because we're in a situation where we are bedside nurses and we can't even find policies. And it's been like that. I've been there for almost 2 years, and it's scary because it's like you want to hold us to policy, but what is the policy? And
Right.
a perfect example of that was just last week when I was at work. I was told, hey, Pam, by the way, CVT ICU is closed. We're combining the units because we're on STEMI diversion. Okay, fine. 2 hours later, hey, we have a patient that's coming in, they're STEMI. And I was like, I thought we were on diversion. We're not anymore. Well, how do you get from we're on STEMI diversion to not being on STEMI diversion within that 2 hour window? And we don't even have a reason why we on STEMI diversion from the beginning. You see?
Yep.
So there's a lot that's going on that needs
There's
to
a lot of opportunity.
Yes.
Yeah.
So,
They're building the plane.
that question about 30 minutes ago, I would still be talking right now, okay?
Okay.
Yeah, there's a lot of work to be done.
Okay, good point. Well, then you can work on that, right?
That's the
First-hand
plan.
experience.
Yeah.
Okay, Jody, what about you?
At the hospital that I left, no one really cared about what the nurses thought. They said that they did,
Yeah.
but they didn't. And the issue was that all of the management was business.
Mm-hmm.
It was business, 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 and nurses are replaceable. And that
Yes,
was
that
Yeah.
assembly line.
on it. And so that was the reason that I would never have done the leadership cohort, because I didn't want to be a nurse manager. I didn't want to deal with it.
Yeah.
So, and that's not probably the professional, but that's honest.
Well,
Because-
no, I think I think we can learn a lot from being honest. One of the things I think, I didn't necessarily, I don't think I really knew. I was still following where I thought I was supposed to go when I stepped into this. But I do remember we have a rather new CNO. I think she's been here for 2 or 3 years or whatever. But I remember going to a leadership meeting, and I'll make this brief. She was talking about culture or whatever, and she was saying things like, how do we make our people know that they're valued, and how do we lean in? And I thought, oh, this is where I'm supposed to be. I haven't heard this anywhere, because I have worked in hospitals where I've heard, if you don't like it, then you can go somewhere else, right? And so once I heard that out of a leader, I thought, man, that's exactly what I think nursing needs to hear. So anyway, I'm done.
guys, I think
All right.
it was a great meeting. Our
It
Zoom
was.
end, so
Yeah, we accomplished everything.
we did.
We did.
Yeah. Good job, ladies.
All right. Well, I think next week we'll be pretty much back here again, doing this
Yep.
again another hour. So I'll bring my questions and I look forward
All
to
right.
having these conversations again.